When we notice that we're not giving our best to those we love, when we notice that something's just not right, what do? Often we might ignore it. Okay, sometimes we might ignore these feelings, we might ignore these emotions, but I'm here to encourage you not to. Let's not ignore those moments. Let's really do some self-analysis and let's see what's going on. And I sort of dedicated this live to women because we wear multiple hats. Everyone does. But I do feel, since I am a woman, I can relate, and I talk to my friends, and often we're experiencing the same thing, where maybe we have kids, maybe we've got our husband, maybe we've got our job, maybe we want to socialize, we have our emotional health to worry about, our physical health that we want to worry about. There's a lot of things going on, and if we do not budget our time accordingly, we'll find ourselves very tired. We'll find ourselves exhausted. We'll find that often we're not being our best self to those that we love, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And so I wanted to let you guys know that I have been reading this book, Rhythms of Renewal, by Rebecca Lyons, I believe it is. Yeah, and I love it. I think it's so good. And something that she's mentioned that I really enjoyed thinking about and pondering was the power of silence. Hey girl, it was the power of silence. And in her book, she mentions how if you're a believer, when you're silent, it gives God an opportunity to just download some information. Okay. But then just for our physical and mental health, how silence is important. And the idea is, if you're like me, silence sometimes can be rare. You guys, let's think about this. How often do you experience silence? Especially if you're working, especially if you have kids, if you've got different things going on, silence is rare. And during my reflection time, I realized that when I experience silence, I often fill it with something else. Because it is so rare, I'm going to put on a podcast. I'm going to play my favorite music. I'm going to turn on a TV show. Why? Because I don't get a moment to myself often. So I'm going to fill it with something that I enjoy. But reading this book, it really helped me realize that I need to take some time and some intentional moments to enjoy that silence and to take that time for myself for self-reflection. And it's been good, okay? Just taking moments and thinking to myself, what's going on with me? There are two questions that I would encourage you all to really think about. One is, how have I been acting? And then two, how am I feeling? How have I been acting? And how am I feeling? And often we can get some really good answers if we use moments of silence for reflection. If I take that moment to really think, how have I been acting? And in those moments, I may realize, oh, I've been a little short with my kids. That's not like me. So now let's dig a little deeper. I love digging. Don't stop at your first answer. Okay, Alice, you've been short with your kids and it's not like you. Why were you short with them? Oh yeah, that day I was really tired. And they were asking me all of these questions and I didn't have answers for them. That's why I was short. Okay, let's not stop there. Let's dig a little deeper. Why were you so tired, Alice? What did you do that day or the day before? I go through that process, okay? Oh, I think I did this and I did that. Oh, we had swimming that day and that always takes up time. Okay, Alice, why did you fill your schedule with all of those things knowing that you'd be watching the children that evening? Knowing that you have to pick up your oldest at a certain time. What I'm trying to demonstrate is how we can ask ourselves questions. We can go through processes and levels to see what is at the root of me snapping. Because remember, the question that we're asking is, how have I been acting? Once you answer that, If you realize that it's out of character for you, then we start to dig. Why were you acting that way? Okay. What was happening in that moment? Who were you talking to? You start to dig. And so for me, I've realized that sometimes I pack my schedule. Okay. I know me. I like to have some chill time. But if I start to pack my schedule back to back, something's going to happen. Okay. If you agree with me, if I'm not alone, you guys, please let me know. Let me know if sometimes you find yourself getting short with those you love because you're busy. When I am busy, I am selfish. It's a simple thought. When I'm busy, I am selfish. And I do believe that it's not just me. I think most of us become that way. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say I'm in the house, all right? This actually happened, I believe, to me and my husband once. He was really busy. We both were busy. And if you're married, sometimes you realize when one is busy, the other's busy because you have to pick up their slack, okay? So he was really busy, which in turn made me really busy. And he was on his way to the next place. Husband was on his way to an appointment, all right? And he asked me before he left, he said, "How are you doing?" And my response was something like, "Not good. Like, I'm stressed." And I remember he looked at me. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he didn't have time. He had to leave. So he left. He said something trying to console me in that moment, but we were both so busy, we did not have time for one another. He didn't have time to come in and give me a hug. He didn't have time to come talk to me and say, "Well, what is it that's bothering you?" We did it later. But what I want us to realize is when we jam-pack our schedules, when we are too busy, we become selfish. And often it's not intentional. Did my husband want to be like, "Oh, well, I gotta go right now"? No. He wanted to talk, but he couldn't. He had another appointment. So therefore, he had to focus on his schedule, focus on his needs at that moment, and he wasn't able to lend himself to me. And I've been in those spaces too, where I'm not able to lend myself to him because I'm so busy, or even with the children. And so once again, when we find ourselves at that point, we have to think, why am I doing this? Okay, we have to start analyzing what's on my schedule. What can I shift around so that there's some margin? People talk about that a lot. Margin. Is there space for you to be free? Is there space for you to experience silence and have self-awareness? Do you have space in your schedule for that? And I want you to think about that. And so once again, we're asking ourselves, how have I been acting? And when we analyze this in our moments of silence, when no distractions are going on, often we're able to identify when or if we're acting out of character. And I'm hoping that sometimes when you have that question, when you ask yourself that, I'm hoping sometimes you'll say, "Hey, everything's good." No, this past week's been amazing. I'm hoping that sometimes we get that answer. That makes me feel good when I do a little reflection and I'm like, "Alice, you're doing good." A little pat on the back. But often that's not the case. Okay, so our first question is, how have we been acting? And we're going to analyze things like, when do I act out of character? We're going to analyze things like, when do I have those most intense feelings? Okay, there are some previous lives where I've talked about me snapping. One time I snapped on Ladarius, and even I knew that was not me. I was like, "Whoa." And in that moment I thought, "Oh girl, my God, what is wrong with you?" That's a sign, you guys. That is a sign. That's a sign that we need to do some more soul work. That's a sign that something's not right. When we feel ourselves snapping like that, that means that we need to analyze some things. What's up, Christina? So that's what I want us to do. I want us to become more aware. And often if we're too busy, we do not have time to be self-aware. Okay? Often we're just thinking about our schedule. Okay? We're just thinking about the schedule, but we're not thinking about our heart. We're not thinking about the emotions we're feeling. We're not thinking about the people that we're hurting in the process. So that's what I want us to think about. Also, when you're acting out of character in those moments, think, who does it involve? Because sometimes our attitude changes when we're around particular people. And how are we feeling in that moment? Are we angry? Are we sad? Are we frustrated? Are we bitter? Are we dealing with unforgiveness? How am I feeling in that moment when I snap? All of these are great questions to ask during moments of silence when we're reflecting on the question, how have I been acting? I am a huge advocate for self-awareness and self-analysis. Approximately maybe 2 years ago, I found myself just really heavy. I just felt I was too busy. I felt like I couldn't come up for breath. I just felt exhausted, you guys. And I remember I was praying and I felt God said, well, then take a break. And I was like, how am I supposed to take a break? What am I supposed to take a break from? And I just felt he led me to look at my calendar. He was like, for this weekend, cancel everything. And I had some parties I was going to. I had some events we were supposed to do. And I just felt, he was like, you can cancel that. You don't have to go to any of this. And so I did. I told my husband, hey, I'm not doing any of this. I'm going to cancel all of this stuff and I'm just going to chill. That's what I did. And that weekend, I actually went to a hotel for one night. And that is when I just went in on myself. I had a counseling session with myself. And I analyzed a few aspects of my life. Sorry, guys. And I'm going to share this with you all. And maybe you can use this for your own self-analysis journey. I heard Darius Daniels mention a few of these. And I think I added one more to it. So I analyzed, how am I doing spiritually? I analyzed, how am I doing physically? I analyzed, how am I doing relationally? And that's not just with a spouse, that's with friends, that's with whomever you love. How am I doing emotionally? How am I doing professionally? And then the sixth one was, how am I doing financially? So we have spiritually, physically, relationally, emotionally, professionally, and financially. The idea is that we need to take time to do some self-analysis. How am I? And like I said before, often we can only do that when we're not too busy. If you find yourself too busy for a moment of silence, if you realize there's no margin for you to change something in your day without everything falling apart, you might need to reevaluate your schedule so that you can ask yourself these things. How am I doing? And when we go through each of these steps, I feel that it really starts to bring awareness to opportunities in our lives. Okay, for instance, spiritually, I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, so I try to read my Bible, I try to pray, I try to make sure that I'm going to church, I try to do those things. So if I realize, oh wow, I haven't really read the Bible in like a week, there's an area of opportunity, okay? When I realize, oh, I'm not exercising or I'm eating everything, once again, that's an area of opportunity. But like I said, that's an opportunity to dig. Well, Alice, why are you eating everything? Okay, why do you no longer have any discipline? What's going on in your life, okay? These are questions that I'm asking myself in the present moment. What's going on in your life where you feel that you don't have the discipline that you once had? And you guys, I'm going to let that sit. Because really, if you think about that, that can open up a world of answers. And often only we know that. If we think about relationally, you have a really good friend, but you haven't talked to them or seen them in a long time. Why? Let's dig deep. Sometimes we're scared of those questions and we're scared of the answers, but let's ask ourselves, why? Is there envy? Is there jealousy? Are you too busy? And if you're too busy, then how do you feel now that you have not spent time with the people that you love? Okay, now I'm not talking about shady relationships, okay, because there is times when we're growing, okay? There are moments of growth where we no longer hang out with people because we're going separate directions. But if there's someone that you care about, if there's someone that adds value to you that you once hung out with and now you don't, we need to dig and think why. And then we need to think okay, let me phrase this correctly. When you're not in their presence for a long period of time, do you notice there's a negative impact? Let me talk about this a little bit. I have two friends that the three of us hang out periodically. Probably every other month we get together and have a sleepover, or we go out to dinner or something like that. And we talk about when we go too long without seeing each other, without having those really deep conversations, creating intimacy in our friendship, we feel it. Okay? We feel it. Why? Because we're created for relationships. So when we go a few months without having those relationships, it starts to take a toll on who we are. Does that make sense? So like for me and my friends, when we're hanging out, we love going into deep conversation. How are you? What are you doing? What are you thinking? How are you feeling? And when we have gone a long time without those conversations, we notice it within ourselves. And so that's why analyzing relationally, how are you doing? Are you hanging out with those that you love? Are you making time to have fun, to have meaningful conversations? That's a part of our well-being. So I want you to think about that. Another aspect to analyze is emotionally. How am I emotionally? And sometimes I feel that's one of the easier ones to analyze if you're like me, because you'll notice random outbursts. Okay, I'll notice that I'm getting short with my kids. Just the other week, I found myself sort of raising my voice, which I don't yell or scream, but I found myself feeling all of these negative emotions towards my oldest son because he was asking a lot of questions. Kids ask questions. But guess what? That was a red flag for me. I was like, Alice, this isn't like you. What's going on? That night, I sat down and I thought to myself, girl, what's going on? And that's when I realized I'm tired. I was so tired that day. I allowed myself to just move and move and move and move. And by the time I had to pick up my son, I was depleted. And therefore he received, I'm embarrassed to even say it, but therefore he received the negative energy. He received my, I don't even know what to say, but that's what he received. Why? Because I didn't manage my time well. Okay? It happens to the best of us. It's being overwhelmed. But the thing is, Faze, I don't want to just accept that answer. I don't want to just say, oh, I was overwhelmed. That's why it happened. Yes, that's why it happened. But how can I stop it from happening again? Will it never happen again? Sure it will. I'm not perfect. But guess what? I can take steps to minimize it. I can take steps to make sure that if it does happen again, I recognize it sooner and I'm able to adjust. I'm able to apologize in the moment. I'm able to have a game plan. I'm all about game plans. Often what I've realized and I started to implement, especially with the kids, is if I find a moment where I'm overwhelmed with negative emotion, I pull away. Literally, okay? Once he dropped his toothbrush in the toilet after he pooped. Okay? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yep, I'm pretty sure that was it. In that moment, I felt intense emotions. I don't like messing with poop. Okay? I don't want to put my hand in the toilet, but guess what? That toothbrush can't stay in there. And guess what? I don't trust him to put his hand in there and take the toothbrush out only. So I had to take a moment. I was like, Noah, stay in the bathroom. I'll be right back. I went in my room. I chilled. I breathed. I prayed. And when I felt I was ready, it probably took me a good 3 minutes, and he was just in the bathroom waiting. I then went out ready, got my gloves, pulled out the toothbrush, flushed the toilet. And so the steps that I like to take when I feel intense emotion is I need to get myself together. And this may not even have to do with kids. Maybe it deals with a spouse. Maybe it deals with a friend. Maybe it deals with your parents, siblings. I don't know. But you gather yourself. Sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to respond in that moment. Like, oh, I can't pull away, get myself together, and then come back. Sometimes we think, oh, well, I'm here. I have to respond right now. It's happening now. We put pressure on ourselves to respond in that moment, when the truth is you don't have to. It's okay for you to gather yourself, gather your thoughts, gather your emotions, pull away, and then come back. If it's dealing with a grown-up, simply saying, hey, I need a moment. I need a moment to think about it. I need a moment to gather myself. We'll talk about it in another hour. Give me an hour. There's nothing wrong with that. And once again, this comes with self-awareness. Trying to be more aware of your mind, of your emotions, of what you're feeling, and what you need to be at your best. Such an obvious thing to do, but we often forget it in the moment. This is going to help me be more intentional with pulling away. Yes, phase. I have learned that it is okay, because sometimes I will put pressure on myself, like, no, you're in this moment, answer now, do this now. But no, it's okay. Take a moment to breathe. Okay? Another aspect that we can analyze is professionally. How am I doing professionally? What am I doing? What do I want to do? Am I making an impact? Even if you stay at home with your children, that, my friends, is many professions, okay? That's cleaning, that's cooking, that's a dentist, that's all of these things in one. So how am I doing? Am I being impactful? Am I happy? I know a lot of people say, it's not about happiness. It's just about making the money. I don't know if I agree. All right. Am I happy? And maybe if you are at a job that you don't enjoy, then the thought is, what can I do on the side to bring more fulfillment? And we're going to get into that a little bit. And also financially is an area to analyze. Am I saving my money? Am I splurging? Am I spending everything that I get? Because some of us do that when we're under pressure. I have to admit, there was a season in my life, if I felt bad, I was going to go buy something. But y'all, typically it was food. I was like, I deserve a Chick-fil-A milkshake, like right now. Okay? So we have things that we go to make us feel better. But is it wise? Is that thing that we're going to, is it healthy? Maybe mentally, spiritually, emotionally, is it healthy? Is it helping you? Or is it just a crutch? These are things we have to think about. Girl, retail therapy, it's a real thing. Okay, it may not be the best thing, but it's a real thing. So these are all things for us to analyze. So now that we've thought about how have I been acting, okay, how have I been feeling, now I want us to think about, what do I need? This may take a little more thought. What do I need? During that, I think I told you guys how a few years back I found myself just really stressed. God told me to cancel everything that was happening that weekend, so I cleared out my schedule, and eventually, I think maybe that following Sunday or Monday, I went to a hotel, just me. That was my first time going to a hotel by myself, probably in, how old was my son then? He might have been 5 or 4, so maybe like 5 years, okay? By myself, went there and did a counseling session on me. And that's when I thought, what do I need? Alice, what brings you fulfillment? And there were a few things. I realized time with my husband, just the two of us, not a double date, not a group date, nope, just me and him. I need that. I want time with my family, meaning just the 4 of us, me, my husband, and my 2 kids. All right. And then I realized I needed time with myself. Just me. No friends, no dates, just me. Those are things I wanted. I also needed time with my friends, but I get that. That's already in my life, so that wasn't something that I had to intentionally implement. But those three things I needed to implement: time by myself with my husband, time by myself with my husband and my children. Those are things that you may hear people say your love tank. Those are things that fill up my love tank. I wanted it to be very intentional. Maybe we're going to a park. Maybe we're going out to eat. I wanted it to be a moment where all four of us felt connected. And so that's more than just all four of us being in the house. I needed all of us to be doing something that I felt was meaningful. All right. And then my third one was time alone. And what I realized is I did not need to go to the hotel every week. Okay. That's not what I needed. But what I needed was just maybe a few hours to go to breakfast. I needed a few hours to think about these 6 areas and analyze, Alice, how are you doing? I needed that time maybe to go get a pedicure and read a book. I just needed time alone so that I could reflect. And I share this because I do not think that I'm the only one who needs these things. And so I want you to think about that. What are some things that you need? And after you identify them, think about how frequently do you need them? Okay? For instance, for me, the 3 things that I shared, I would like to experience those 3 things once a month. So once a month, I want just a one-on-one date with me and my husband, okay, at minimum. Once a month, I want time alone. And once a month, I want a very specific activity with me and my family. So I started off small. Since I've been doing this, because it's been a couple of years, I usually get more than once a month because I'm very intentional. Okay? And so this is what I want for all of us. We're busy. We have lives. We have things going on, but we can't neglect analyzing how we are doing and what is it that we need that would help bring about fulfillment. And this is important because if we don't do this, we will find in years to come that we're looking back with resentment. We're looking back with regret. We may even find in the present that we're looking at those around us with resentment. Or we start to envy those who we see taking the steps that we wish we would take. Now that is reality and that is truth. If you find yourself being judgmental or being envious of other people who you see taking advantage of, spending time by themselves, going on dates with their spouses, hanging out with their families, or doing whatever it is that you wish you were doing, once again, remember those red flags? That's a red flag. That means you need to analyze what's going on with me. Okay? So let's be aware of the red flags in our lives, those emotions. How am I acting? Am I acting out of character? How am I feeling? Am I feeling envious? Am I feeling jealous? Am I feeling frustrated? What's going on with me? And what do I need to do to handle this? What do I need to do? Not to just be like, oh, that's me. I'm always jealous. I always get sad when I see other people on dates. That's just how I am. No. What do I need to handle that? How can I change? How can I make myself better? How can I progress? And that's when we go into the what do I need? What are the things that I need to find fulfillment? And how frequently do I need to implement them in my life? And then another thing I want to share is the power of gratitude. In those moments of silence that I talked about a little bit earlier, okay, when we allow ourselves to be silent, when we allow ourselves to be still, which there is a difference, sometimes we can experience silence, but not stillness. So maybe it's silent in my home, but I am very busy, okay? There's nothing wrong with that because I definitely had those moments and I appreciate those moments. But there's something even more powerful when you have silence and stillness. So when it's silent and I'm sitting on my bed and I'm just thinking. When it's silent and I'm sitting on the couch and I'm just thinking. Okay, in those moments, what are you thinking about? But I would encourage you in those moments to start thinking about things that you're grateful for. Wow, I'm grateful for this home. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my friends. I'm grateful for this experience that I just had this past weekend. I'm grateful for fill in the blank. I think this is a great way to start the whole self-analysis process, because what we don't want is when we're analyzing ourselves, we don't want to all of a sudden think in the end, oh, my life sucks. Okay, because that could happen as we analyze, how am I doing spiritually, physically, relationally, emotionally, professionally, financially. There may be areas that need improvement, and it's possible that we need improvement in all of those areas. And if that is a fact, we do not want to end that moment of self-reflection with I suck. That's not the goal, okay? So let's start off with gratitude. I'm grateful for. Let's start off even appreciating ourselves. Progress. What have I done that's improved? The past week, what did I do? That was great. Appreciation and gratitude will help set you up for a nice self-analysis that's beneficial. And the last thing that I'm going to say, after we've identified what we need, let's start from the top actually. After we thought about how we're acting, okay? After we've thought about how we feel, and then after we've identified what we need, then let's start focusing on our focus. Yvonne, the actress, said that in her book that I read. I forgot what it was called. But she said, focus on your focus. And I love that. Focus on the things that you know will promote health and wellness with you. If that means reading your Bible in the morning, if you're a believer like me, if that means praying, if that means those things that I mentioned before, spending time with your husband, spending time with your friends, spending time by yourself, whatever it is, let's start focusing on our focus. Let's not get distracted, because even though I named 3 things, it is very easy for me to go like 2 months without doing any of the 3. Why? Because life gets busy. In order to progress in those 6 categories, we have to focus on our focus. What is the goal? What are we trying to do? Let's focus on our focus, guys, so that we can be better people in our relationships, so that we can be more impactful, so that we can add value to the rooms that we walk in. Let's analyze ourselves in a moment of silence and stillness, thinking, how have I been acting lately? And that's going to help us analyze, have I done anything out of character? Am I being mean constantly? How have I been acting, number 1. Number 2, how have I been feeling? All right. And you can think about different aspects of your life, the 6 ones that we discussed: spiritually, physically, relationally, emotionally, professionally, financially. How have I been feeling about these various things that create my life? And then what do I need to do? What do I need to do to preserve my sanity so that I'm good for those around me? And then lastly, making sure that we're adding gratitude, and that in the end, we're focusing on our focus, not anyone else's, but we're focusing on our focus.